Sparking Change with Gigi, a show that aims to make the world a better place by bringing together authentic minds. This show encourages each of us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Get ready to be inspired and join us on this journey to create a brighter future for all.
Welcome everyone to Sparking Change with Gigi. I'm your host, Giovanna Tartarone, and today we have a special guest who's been on our show many times before, Bill Foth. Welcome, Bill. So great to have you again.
Thank you for having me.
And today's show, we're going to be talking about how do we reach financial freedom. We're in that season where we're doing our taxes. So Bill is an expert in the tax advisory, and he also is a financial educator. He's been in the finance world for, I don't want to say how many years, but you're definitely the expert. And I, welcome you to come on and really share some of these secrets that I believe can lead us to financial freedom. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and how do you help clients really reach that? And at the core, I do understand that there's a spiritual component to our finances. And what does that really mean? And educate us, please.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. And my name, I basically had 30 years of doing tax preparation work. I was an adjunct professor of finance and accounting at SUNY Farmingdale for 17 years, where I taught all kinds of investments, tax, accounting, all that kind of stuff. I was also a certified financial planner, and I taught in the CFP training program. So I became the expert's expert, teaching them how to be qualified to become a financial expert. So I kind of know my stuff, and I've always worked with basically people who are either small business owners or who are trying to spiral up or level up or have a better quality of life. And what I find is that I'm into mindset in a big way, and the idea we all have mental models or paradigms.
Yes.
Of the way we think about the way the world works. And when we align ourselves with successful or biblical or ancient wisdom, then life gets easier. When we go against the ancient wisdom or, the alignment with life gets harder. Right. So the idea is like some of us, we have a map of Chicago, and we're trying to get around to New York. The map of the map that we have in our mind doesn't match the territory we're trying to navigate. So we need to improve the quality of our thinking, the way we look at things, the way we perceive things. And right. So that really is the root cause. I mean, the idea is that, saving money on taxes, that's easy to do, but that's an effect. The cause is how financially astute are you? And then, how financially astute you are, it has a lot to do with your self-esteem and your sense of worthiness and how valuable you think you are. A lot of us self-sabotage. We shoot ourselves in the foot. We don't feel that we're good enough. Right. And we limit the choices that we make or the things that we'll allow to happen in our lives because of our psychological wounds or childhood wounds. So we need to heal those things. But ultimately, we're leading to the idea that, we're all expressions of the divine mind. We live in an abundant universe. Another mental model I like to use is the idea of the ocean of life, if you want to call it that, is vast. So why do some of us go to the ocean of life with a thimble? Some go to the ocean of life or think to go to the ocean of life with a bucket. And other people think to go to the ocean of life with a tub because they think they're worthy of more. And even some people think to go with a tanker truck.
Right.
And some people have the gumption to think, let me take a fleet of tanker trucks. The ocean of life doesn't lack the capacity to give us everything that we want. And it still not be diminished because that's what the ocean of life does. It's designed to give. It's designed to love us. It's our capacity to receive that we need to enhance or improve. So right. That's kind of where, I go to the root cause with people when I work with clients. We want to get them more money back on their taxes. But and if they're a business owner, then, how can they make more money as a business owner, bring in more revenue? And, and then the idea is, having their personal identity needs to be expanded. And this is really what we're talking about, identity shift. What kind of identity do we need to have in order to be successful in the world? Or, and it really a lot of it comes down to, God gave us two great commandments. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your brother as yourself. Right?
Right.
So the idea is we're supposed to take care of each other. It's not what you can get, it's what you can give. And that's
And that's how you receive, right? I mean,
receive. If it's kind of like having hugs. Hugs do you no good until you give them away. Same thing with kisses. The idea is that what goes around comes around is the principle.
right.
So if you want to have more, you got to give more. If you want to, create more, you got to be more. So you need to level up your skill sets. And so, but anyway, so
I
that's
love,
my
yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
I mean, you said so much, and that is so important to understand. And I'll take little, chunks of it. But the number one thing that even when I went into personal development, it was all about understanding who you are and shifting the identity of what you think you are, right? Or what your capabilities are. Because if you see yourself as being just a manager, if you're working for a company, then it will be very hard for you to step into that director's role, right? If that's the next step, because you're automatically don't see yourself there, right? So talking about identity shift, but where do we get this identity from? We have to really look at, like you said, the root cause of our identity, and what we believe is to be true about us comes from years of repetition, comes from years, from family, from school, from our background, our environment. And so when you make that decision to say, okay, I'm ready to be a director, and nothing's going to stop me, not my past, not my circumstances, not what I have in my bank, that doesn't matter. I'm ready to be a director, right? To make a very simple analogy to like real life events. But how does one change that identity? Because that's the inner work that becomes so crucial in understanding that the abundance that we have is always there. It's never going to go away, right? Whatever we want is already here.
Right.
How do we match up to that so that we can get that? Is doing that inner work, which, we could say spiritual work, but it's understanding the abundance that is already existing.
Right. Exactly. I mean, what I find when I work with the story of Joseph comes to mind. If he basically was his brothers beat him up and kidnapped him and sold him into slavery, and in Egypt. And the idea is that because of who he was, God favored him. No matter what situation he found himself in, he prospered. So and he got to the point where he was interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. And he became the leader, or the second in command in all of Egypt. And he also realized that and one of the principles was that you need to take money that you have today or wealth you have today and put it aside for the future, because there's a cycle to seasons. There's good times and bad times. So when there's good times, and part of the philosophy is money is for more than just spending, or wealth is more than just consuming. We gotta plan for the future and put aside for that. So the idea, that's a basic mindset shift that people need to have. Money is more than just spending, and then it's who you become. Because when you become able to receive, then the universe blesses you.
Right.
So, and what I found, and this is part of my own personal journey, I was beaten as a child, so I had all kinds of trust issues with authority figures, and I didn't trust, I always needed to be self-employed because I thought a boss was sure out to get me. And I tried to heal from that complex PTSD in a lot of ways. I did it with 20 years of modern psychoanalysis, which helped me understand a little bit about why I was the way I was, but didn't change anything. And then I also did 10 years of moving up the emotional scale with Abraham, and that helped some. But the issue, until it didn't cure the problem where the root cause is, which is in my subconscious. In my subconscious, I didn't believe I was worthy. I was afraid of the world. I was, because of what had happened, the imprinting that went on in my developmental years. Mm-hmm. Then I ran into the Bruce Lipton book, Biology of Belief. And then I ran into, it sounded too good to be true. We talked about psyche. It's not a strange word, but the idea, there's a modality that deals with the issues where they are, which is in the subconscious. So we can transform the subconscious limiting beliefs and help people change the triggers that are keeping them down into something that is not so triggering, and then also help them have the capacity to have better beliefs, transform those beliefs, increase, I call them the 5 childhood wounds. I am enough. I am worthy. I am lovable. I am safe.
Right.
Right. And then a lot of times people have abandonment issues. And, so the idea is that we need to heal our childhood wounds. And when we do that, our identity shifts, our capacity to receive shifts. So the tool that I use that helped me, basically, I used it for healing purposes, psyche, and that's how you and I became friends.
That's right.
Through the psyche, and it's a energy healing modality that helps people spiral up in consciousness, or helps them heal the wounds. And it takes what's bad and makes it good, and takes what's good and makes it better. So the idea is that how do we, like the question is, how do we change our limiting beliefs? This is a major tool to help people do
the
that.
Financial freedom, in itself is being dictated by our belief system.
Exactly.
By our, what we know to be true. So I know for myself personally, I had needed to change the perception of what does wealth really mean? What does financial freedom really mean? Right? Because there's a meaning behind it that we give from our perception, from our lens. And until we can transform it to where it makes us feel good, because right now, if we're not there, it means we're not understanding the true connection of what we are in this world, right? Because there's abundance of everything, but yet we think that there's an abundance, a lack of money in this world, or a lack of money in ourselves.
Right.
It's connected to our scale of understanding of what we're worth.
Exactly. I mean, the idea is that we all vibrate in an energy frequency, whatever the law of attraction talks about that. So the idea that if I have some beliefs about myself that are, say, down here, and I'm vibrating here, I'm going to attract things that are down here. But if I can raise my beliefs about myself, my energy level goes up and I attract differently. So, that is really the task. There's another way of saying it, which goes back to the biblical thing, is we're all prodigals, meaning that in the truth, or in the universal oneness in the mind of God, however you want to say it, all the great religions talk about it. There's only oneness. There's unity, and that's the truth of us. We're at home with God in eternity, but we're here on the third dimension, experiencing separation. And that's a dream. It's not real. So the issue is, and Jesus talked about it in the Bible, walking our brothers home, walk with them a while, the story of the prodigal son leaving his father's house to go out and make his way in the world. And then he finally finds himself eating with the pigs. And he says, my servants in my father's house would, live better than I do. So he starts going home, and he's hoping that his father would take him back. But as soon as he got in sight of him, God came to him, his father came out and, put the royal robe around him and gave him the ring. And that's what we have the ability to do if we allow ourselves to humble ourselves, put our ego aside, and be guided by a spirit and universal truth. And anyway,
Yes.
that's
the inner work, right? That we always talk about, that we need to do inner work to self-assess. Why do we think the way we think? Why are we trapped in this narrative that we don't have enough? That there's not, we have to work really, really hard in order to make it. Because I see now, the harder you work, the less I bring in, right? It's like effortless, like water running on a faucet, or the river, right? It flows nice and easy. There's no pressure, and it still gets the job done. So we're very similar to that. If we're doing what we love to do, life just flows.
Yeah. There's another model that goes along with the river analogy, and that's that the idea, they say, between the banks of pain and pleasure, the river of life flows. And the idea is whether we're on the pleasure side or on and the river can have times when it's calm, but there's also rocks in the river. Those rocks are our subconscious limiting beliefs. If we could remove the rocks, then the journey along the river would be smoother, would be calmer, would be more joyful, would be, we'd have less problems. So the issue
not even remove them, but navigate, right? Navigate around them. Don't let them keep us stuck.
Well, the idea is how to get rid of them. In other words, can we get an excavator and get rid of the rock so that when we go through there is no rock to have to deal with? I mean, that's the other issue that I find is that, and I found myself doing this, I tend to cope with the issues that I had. For most of my life, I was coping. I was trying to heal, but in other words, we put ourselves in a box that's safe. And the idea is that, so I only allow certain things to come into my box because I'm coping with the rocks that I have. I'm not healing them. I mean, in other words, I'm not getting rid of the need to cope. I'm not actually healing the root cause of the problem. If you get rid of the root cause of the problem, then there is no reason to be in the box because you're safe and and there's no rocks in the water to cause it to be churning. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I love, let's talk about Psyche a little bit, because I know it totally transformed my life to understanding, I'm here for, I'm a gift. I'm a gift to the world. We all are a gift to the world, right? And I didn't know that, but I knew that at the point where my life was spared during my cancer journey. And so I say to myself, why did I get that second chance? So I start to question, and this is where my heart opened up, is when I began to questioning, okay, I was given a second chance. There's got to be a purpose and a reason for me to be here. And that began my spiritual journey to understanding that the reason why I was having such a difficult time in my life prior was, I was smoking because I was stressed out. I wasn't eating right. Why was I doing all these things? Because I was disconnected to understanding that we're here and we're always being guided as long as we are on our path, on the mission that, serves others, right? We're not just on a mission for ourselves. We're in a mission to give and make this world a better place. And and I was disconnected from the source. I call it God. You could call it the universe, life force, energy force, infinite intelligence, whatever name you would like to give it. Allah, Buddha, Krishna, you name it. I was disconnected from the creator. And so therefore, I experienced a lot of hardship in my life. I kept going. I kept working, trying to climb the ladder. I climbed one ladder, then I was knocked down, climbed another ladder, and I was knocked down, until I began to question, this can't be life. This is not what life is about. It's not about working, and you keep getting knocked down. To realize that the connection to source, I had to reconnect back to source. And how did I do that? I did it. And unfortunately, I did it through pain, right? I did it where I was at, I had to surrender and say, okay, God, I'm ready to go into surgery. I'm in your hands. If you want me to live and be of service to your children, to my brothers and sisters, then let me open my eyes when it's done. And so he did. And so now I know without a doubt, no matter what I'm doing, there is something that is guiding me. I'm still going to go through some pain, but I do know I'm always connected to the source, and I will be saved. Whatever troubles come my way, and that's where not only do I gain financial freedom because I don't have to worry anymore, but I gain the freedom, quote unquote, to live life without fear. That's where I'm at right now in my life.
Beautiful.
Right? And I encourage everyone to just think about this story, because we're all there. We were all there, having the illusion of separation.
Right. Well, another thought comes to mind, the idea that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Right.
And the idea is that sometimes, and this is what I found with the Psyche, is one of the balances or one of the uses or power or efficaciousness of it, is it can take a condition that you have in your life, whether it's a psychological one or a physical one, and ask, universe, the higher self, the spirit, is there a message for me in me having this condition? Sometimes God kicks us in the shins and tries to get us to pay attention to something because we're not paying attention to something. So we're given a way to think about things, or we're given a physical condition. And the issue is there a message for it? So with the Psyche, we have a way of, one, discerning if there is a message for the condition. And if there is, there's a way to transform it. So I'm learning the lesson that God's trying to teach me so that I don't no longer have to have the condition and we have a healing. So
Right.
Yeah.
And we all go through this understanding, like once we get this, we transform this perception of that stressful situation, or even my cancer journey. It was like, I look at cancer now. I know this may sound strange, but it was a gift. It was a gift for me to get reconnected to my source, where I have the freedom now to say, whatever comes my way, there is enough faith in me to know that I'm going to be okay.
You have the conviction.
Yeah. And so, and sometimes, we're here to teach and educate that I'm not special, you're not special, that we all go through hardship in life, but getting reconnected to understanding who you are and whose you are makes the difference in our lives. And this is where you become a gift. Your knowledge and your education about educating entrepreneurs and women especially, to let them find every little ways that they can save money so they can use it to go on vacation, or they can use it, this is the gift that you found, that you had, that you never knew you had. Before, you thought you just had to go work in corporate America like I did and work, and this is how you're going to survive. But now there's other ways of surviving. Right. And without worrying about where is it going to come from, because you're providing a service and the funds are going to come.
Part of it is, instead of efforting, it's allowing. In other words, the mental model I have is, it's not coming from me, it's coming through me. I'm a conduit for the grace of God to bless the world in whatever way, with whatever gifts I have. It's not me, it's God expressing as me. That's
it's funny. I came across a Facebook post or somewhere that said, God doesn't need permission to use a vessel.
Okay.
Right? So if he decides to use you to help others with their taxes, and if you're not surrendering to that, if you're not seeing that gift that you have in you, then you're working really hard to make it in life, until you're like, oh yeah, I love doing this. Right? So it's letting go and understanding, and be open to learn that maybe there is a different way of doing things. Yeah. And there's many stories that connect biblically to what we're saying here. With God, all things are possible.
Right.
Right. So what does that leave out? What does that leave out?
Nothing.
So nothing. And so when people are afraid of what may happen, I understand now we're not thinking about all things are, with God, all things are possible. We're missing an equation. Our late mentor, Rob Williams, who wrote the book, The Missing Piece, right? The missing piece in our life is the component of understanding there's something greater than us in charge, whatever that is that you're calling it. Right. Again, we call it God, but there's something greater than us. They're saying, you got a gift to be on this planet. It's a gift. How many little squirrely thing that we had to fight to get through to be here on this planet, right? It's a gift. And we are a gift to each other. And we have to serve each other. But when we're worried about money and not service, then that is where we get very concerned, correct?
Yeah, exactly. That kind of brings up another biblical story. The idea of the parable of the talents. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The idea that talents being gold, but the master gives three servants talents or money, basically, and goes away. When he comes back, he asks the first talent, "What did you do with the money?" And with the talent, and the person, the servant says, you gave me one, I'm returning 10, so I went and invested your money wisely. And he said, great, good, faithful servant, job well done. Then he goes to the second one. He says, well, I went and invested, I got 5 talents to return for the one that you gave me. And he said, great, well, job well done, good and faithful servant. And then he goes to the last one. He says, well, master, I put the money in the ground because I didn't want to lose it, and I was afraid of it might get stolen, so I didn't do anything with it. And the master threw him out of the house and said, you're an evil person, And the idea, so what's the moral of the story? What's the idea? Is that we're given resources as stewards, and our job is to make them grow and prosper, not to hoard them. So that the idea is that learning how to do that, that's part of what I do. That's a practical stuff of what I do. I help you make Uncle Sam your favorite uncle, because he's going to pay for your retirement. He's going to pay for your kids' college. There's ways of doing that as a business owner that there's sections of the tax code that are designed to help small businesses be successful. The government wants you to be successful because then they can tax you more.
When there's
they can't make any money off you. So
right. And then there's the other mindset that says, let me put this money under the mattress. It's going to be safe. Right. And I will tell you, in today's economy, that money is not very safe right now. Right. Yeah. Because the dollar's losing value and everything else. But it's a mindset shift.
Yeah. Well, the idea, it's making things circulate. That's
currency means what? A current. A current underwater is always moving. So money has to move, of course.
Yeah. Here's another thought. Every story of the widow. I think it's Elijah. It's in 2 Kings, verse 4, 1-7. The widow's in debt, and the debtors are about to take their son and put him in debtor's prison. And so she goes to Elijah, can you help me? And he says, well, what do you have in your house? And she says, I don't have anything in my house. And he says, well, you must have something. And he says, I have a small cruse of oil. So he tells her to go out and borrow as many vessels as you can. As many as you can, go and borrow them. So the idea, one of the principles here is it's okay to go into debt. But the idea is that she got all the vessels that she could get from far and wide and high and low, and she had them there. So then, and he said, now pour the oil. So she started pouring the oil, and it kept pouring and pouring and pouring. And each one of the vessels got filled up. And he said, is there another vessel? He said, there's no more vessels. They're all full. So then he said, go and sell the oil, pay off your debts, and live off your increase. But the idea, if she just kept the oil and not shared it or not, there wouldn't be an increase. So the idea, there's a capacity for the universe to flow. It's our capacity to receive. The belief that all she had was oil. So again, there's a mindset shift that needs to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfectly sense, because we are trained to think we have to save for ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to look for ourselves, right?
Yeah, I guess the question is, what if abundance is already available, but it only fills what you're prepared to receive? I guess that's the moral of the story.
Yeah. And we can only receive what we believe. Right. We can only receive what we believe. So
this goes back to the idea of Jim Rohn. He was a business philosopher, and he has a story. I've been a big fan of his for many years, and he's got such good ways of thinking about things. And one of the things he says, one of his parables, if you want to call it that, is he says the wind, the rain, the sun, the soil, and the seed is available to all of us. We all come into this world with the access or capacity to use those. So why do some people thrive and do well? Some people just get by, and some people are struggling.
Well, the answer, wait for this one. The answer that most people will say is some are lucky and some aren't.
Right.
And I will tell you, Bob Proctor, my mentor, said there's no such thing as luck.
That's right.
It's not luck. It comes down to, what do we believe about ourselves? And if you trace it back to what you believe about yourself, it comes down to, how were you raised? What environment were you raised in? And if you can understand that the environment that you were raised in, the way you were raised, doesn't really dictate your life. You can change things that you didn't like that occurred in your life, and not make them your story anymore. We're still running on those old stories about what happened to us in our lives that is preventing us to.
Well, that's the challenge. I mean, for most people who have some success in life, or we've all had challenges. Life comes with challenges. We come into the world screaming, that type of thing. But the idea is that, so the question is, how do you overcome the challenges, or how do you transcend the challenges? Or, and one of the problems we have in our society today is that, we're supposed to put our best foot forward and make it sound like we have it all together. We've got no problems. And, and that may be true for the public consumption, but internally we know that may or may not be true. Yeah, we want to feel good about ourselves, and we do most of the time. But if you're bumping into a glass ceiling in terms of your success or things that you want in life, what's preventing that? And it's not the wind, the rain, the sun, or the soil. It's the guy looking back at you from the mirror. So how do you level up in consciousness? How do you transform the limiting beliefs? How do you shift your identity into someone who's worthy to become successful? How do you become worthy of having or receiving the talents and making them work? So it's all weaves together. What I find is that as a tax guy, the conventional wisdom says that you go to a tax man for the taxes, you go to your financial guy for your finances, you go to your shrink or your therapist for your psychological stuff, and you go to your priest for your spiritual stuff. And what I'm saying is that it's all weaves together. It's all part of the same thing. It's kind of like the mental model shift is from the world is flat to the world is round. Because one part, the foot bone's connected to the ankle bone's connected. It's all connected. And the idea, if we deal with root causes, the root cause is that God made us here to be a blessing, to help take care of each other. So how can we be the best, most upgraded version of ourselves that we can be? And so that's where I think the effects will happen. The root causes is what needs to improve, and that's where having a capacity to be okay with not being okay.
Right.
That's part of the problem. Everybody wants to be, I got my stuff together, but
it's just a front, because we don't want to deal with the critic that's, we're our own critic. We're our own judge. I think it was there was another podcast I was watching. It was related to near death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And they all say the same thing. Like you go through this 30-second, maybe 5-second reel of your life to see what happened in your life, your whole life journey. You're reviewing your whole life journey in 5 seconds when you are on the other side.
Yeah.
But who's reviewing it is you. It's your own consciousness reviewing your life. You're your own judge. There's no man on the other side judging you. You're your own judge. And so if we can see that now, and say, okay, and be honest with ourselves, right? Be authentic with ourselves and facing the demons, because we do have demons within us, to clean that up. That is where freedom comes in, whether it's financial freedom, health free, maybe a lot of suffering from health issues. Even that prevents us, our past prevents us to heal, because we're thinking about all the things that everyone did to us. And it's about surrendering to that and letting that go, because that is preventing us to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Jesus says to the cripple, pick up your bed and walk. What doth hinder you? He doesn't see the limitations that the person has. The person does, because they believe all the limitations that they have, so they act that way. But spiritually, there is no limitations. So again, how do we get to that mindset? How do we get to that identity? That's that.
Yeah, and I think also, you and I both went down that path of understanding, there is a spiritual level that we're made up that we've never learned in school about. We never, no one ever taught us, remember, you are physical, spiritually, and mentally one. That's what makes us up as a human being, right? And we forgot that spiritual part. And so as much as we say that doesn't matter because we don't see it, it's actually the first thing that guides us. And when we're not following that spiritual part of us, that is when we are not in harmony with life.
Yeah, yeah. Another biblical story is coming to mind. One of the guy who is very wealthy, and he has a huge harvest, and he makes a lot of it, and he says, "I'm going to build myself another barn," and he stores all his increase into the barn, and the next day he has a heart attack and dies. So what's the story there? The idea is that the wealth isn't to be hoarded; it's to be shared. It's to be used as a tool to wealth without meaning equals spiritual bankruptcy. Planning for comfort but not contribution is the real poverty. And that's the issue. So the other thing is, like people like Bill Gates and, Elon Musk and so on, there even people who aren't at that stature, because that's the ultra, that's the exception, not the rule. But the idea is our wealth grows. The idea is how do we pay it forward? And there's all kinds of goodies or ways in the tax code that encourages people. I mean, the IRS and Uncle Sam and Congress puts things in the tax code because they want people to behave in a certain way. And they want to give you a financial incentive to do it. So they give you a tax deduction or tax savings or a credit or something so that if you do this, you don't have to pay as much money to us. And the idea is that you can set up a charitable foundation, a family foundation, and take highly appreciated assets that you have and donate it to the charity, which you control. And then the charity now uses the money that either the rental property or the highly appreciated assets, it sells the asset or uses the money there and does the public good, whatever it is you want to be about. The person who makes the donation gets a tax deduction for making the donation to the charity. So it's win-win-win in the sense that, everybody benefits, but it's about paying it forward. If you don't have the intent to want to be able to make a difference with your money, you just want to, have a bigger boat, a bigger house, a bigger car, So there's another philosophy that's developing of enoughism. I'm at the stage in my life where I can only eat a couple meals a day. I can only drive one car. I got a wife. I got a house, there's not too many people I'm interested in impressing. So what can I do with what I have? It's to share it. It's to give it away. How can I plant the seeds and have a harvest rather than how can I consume it? Anyway, that's the thought.
No, it's so true because I think, we're all given, we're used as a vessel to affect other people's lives. Right. So when you're blessed with more than you can have, more than you can do, what else are you going to do with it? Right. And doesn't it make you feel good when you're actually giving it away? And, talk about the IRS a little bit, but there's two views of looking at it. Right. The IRS can be your friend or it can be your enemy. And we have been taught that the IRS is our enemy. Right. And so it's funny because I heard in another podcast about how, we're taught to don't tell the IRS you're making so much money, so take all the deductions you can. At the same token, you can also claim you made a lot of money, but then use the money that you made for donations. Right. So it's like from what lens are you looking at it? And if you have one lens that you've been looking at it for 50 years, it's time to reassess because there are, different ways that you can allocate your money.
Yeah. Part of the mind shift of the coaching that I do with clients, if you want to call it that, is how do we turn the tax boogeyman, fear of the IRS that he's out to get me, into he's your favorite uncle and he's that wants to really help you be successful, because if you're more successful, then he can tax you more. And so there's all kinds of opportunities or things built into the tax code, particularly if I work with mompreneurs or people who are, that implies you're a business owner and you're a parent. I mean, you have kids. And there are some sections of the tax code that let you hire your children. If you hire your children, you get a tax deduction for what you're paying them. Wow. They now have earned income. They can do a Roth IRA. And the strategy is if you make a circle, and you put a line down the middle, 50% of what we earn or what comes in is what we keep. And the other 50% goes out to the government in taxes. So the strategies are, let's sort of make Uncle Sam our friend so we're only paying 25% of our money in taxes rather than 50%. So that's the goal. And again, there's ways that you can say, well, if I can circulate the money within my family and get a tax deduction and put the money in my pocket and help my kids become financially free sooner, that's all available, is there, but people don't know about it. They're not aware of it. Again, they see Uncle Sam as the enemy rather than as an opportunity.
Right, right. And then, and then there's effects from that, because if you see it as an enemy, then it prevents you from making more money, because you're like, why am I going to do this if I'm going to have to give it to Uncle Sam?
Exactly.
But that's a fallacy, because there's ways that you can benefit yourself and your family.
Yeah. Well, the way I like to think about that, think of it as people say, well, I don't want to make more money. I'm going to have to just pay it up and pay more taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, think of it as a pizza pie. If you have a pizza pie, it's got 8 slices and you got to give 2 away. You still get to eat 6. So you want to, because you got to give away 2, you don't want to eat the other 6. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's small-minded thinking.
Well, it's a mindset shift. It's a paradigm shift from what they've been taught.
Yeah.
And so the work that, and I love, because the clients that come to you, you're giving them benefits on the tax side, and you're also changing their mindset to see, for them to see it from a different lens. And when you become aware, this is the thing, is that we're not aware if we don't ask questions, if we don't learn and get educated on what other possibilities there are, that can give you a better return, if we're talking about taxes, right? And so, but it stems from, at the core, it's our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
At what level of consciousness are we working at? Because the consciousness is the root cause of all things. Our consciousness is the root cause of everything in our life. And if you can accept that, and you can now say, I'm ready to work on my consciousness on how I feel about money and taxes, that's when you become financially free.
Exactly. That's exactly how I tend to work with clients. They may come in with taxes, and we help them save money on taxes. But the issue is, we look at their finances. We do a financial physical, I call it that, where we look at the last 3 years' tax returns to see how tax efficient are they? Were they done well, or were they done poorly? Is there opportunities to go back and amend them and get them some more money back? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but we don't know till we look. It's like going to the doctor and you having a physical. He can't prescribe until he diagnoses. Right. We got to diagnose how financially healthy you are. So the next thing is we do a net worth statement. So then from there, I can diagnose what stage of the financial life cycle are you in, and what are the things you should be doing at this level of your life or this time of your life, based on your net worth and based on your risk tolerance, to see how well you're asset allocated. And then it gives me the opportunity to say, no, these are the things these people need to learn, and I can educate. I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to educate.
Right. They make the decisions.
Stupidity you can't do much about, but ignorance you can. People can learn, right? So and then what happens is we get into the financial physical is good. Then we come up with recommendations. We'll go through, on the financial planning part of what I do. Not everybody wants it, but we do it. As we look at we do an investment review, we do an insurance review, we do a retirement planning review. We look at their credit. We do the good, the bad, and the ugly of their credit. We do credit rehab if not, and if the credit is good, not an issue. Right. How well are they leveraging or using debt, other people's money? We look at the estate planning documents that they have. I'm not a lawyer, I don't do that, but we make sure that people have the things in place so that if the bad things in life happen, their family is going to be taken care of. And then we do goal setting. What do they want to be about? What's important to them? Where do they want to go? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And then we map out a plan to help them get there. So that's part of the financial overview that we do, and the financial education they get is ways of thinking about things. I become people's go-to guy for financial stuff. They say, well, let me run this by Bill. Let me see what Bill thinks about this. Right. And I don't like to tell them what to do, but I like to give them the ways of thinking about it. And then they can make a wise, informed, like I say, informed decision, not just something off the seat of the pants, and not something based on fear.
Right. That's the magic word, right? Because a lot of it is done based on fear. A lot of it is, okay, let me put it here because it's safe. And then we have a market crash and it's no longer safe. Right. So it's understanding and learning what other options are available.
Yeah. I had a client who was, in 2016, she went through a divorce, and her finances, got ruined. And she was, I tend to find people who are starting over in some way, and they're in their mid 40s or 50s, and they've gotten beaten up by life a little bit, but they're on their way back. They're recovering, but now they want to get to the next level. They want to retire safely someday. And they've got another 10, 20, 30 years to get there. So they're looking for guidance. Yeah. And what happened is we looked at her credit. Her credit was terrible. She was, because she had to survive, she was living on debt, and she was making about 50 grand a year. And then we did some, we went back and amended a whole bunch of her tax returns, got some more money back because they were done poorly. And then we started doing some of the psyche work, the self-esteem work, the worthiness work. And she's a subject matter expert in her area. She just needed to get out there and have the confidence that she's worthy of it. Now she's making over 200 grand a year. She's a marketing consultant for, some major, I can't talk too much.
Right.
But the idea is that because her sense of self-esteem went up, her sense of value went up, she's not a broken person because she went through a divorce. She's able to be a better mother. She's able to have a better quality of life. She takes better vacations. She went from being like 180 pounds down to she's 120 now. And again, her whole sense of worthiness shifted. And because of that, now that's maybe an exception, but, or maybe not. I mean, that the idea is that, that those are the kind of things that can happen when your identity shifts. And how do you make your identity shift?
It's a level of consciousness that we are at that is directly connected to our health, our wealth, our whole life, basically. And so, when we get to the root cause of issues, we can change the results in our life.
Yeah.
I started with one of the programs I started with was Thinking into Results with Bob Proctor's work, right? And it's like thinking differently. But in order to think differently, we have to change our perception of what we're looking at, right? It's either you can look at the glass half full or you can look at the glass half empty. It's the same glass, it's the same water. But how are we looking at things determine the results in our life.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I know it's like people think I believe it. I believe it when I see it.
Right.
And my understanding from my own experience, I need to believe it first. And then it will come. Because you put so much energy in what you believe, no different than starting a business, and you believe that this is the business that you're going to serve people with, and that it's going to take off no matter what. It may take a little longer to take off. Every plant needs the nurturing. Every business needs the nurturing, just like a plant. You don't know when it's going to spout, but it's going to spout. And having that strong belief,
right,
is going to create the results.
Another thing with Jim Rohn comes to mind. He talks about the cycle of seasons, and we all go through seasons of life. I was talking about this client who went through seasons of life with her relationships. We go through seasons of life in our careers with our kids. But the idea is that in the wintertime, we're supposed to recharge and learn, and then in the springtime, that's the time to sow seeds. That's the time to put stuff in the ground, prepare the soil, and put things there. We don't harvest in the springtime. We plant seeds in the springtime. Our ideas, our thoughts. Maybe we're starting a business. There's different stages of that. Then in the summertime, the idea is we got to protect what the plants. We got to weed around it, and we got to fertilize it. We got to water it. We got to make sure that it grows. And then in the fall, there's a harvest, and that's where the abundance comes. So there's a cycle to seasons. There's a time for that. And then in the wintertime again. And that seems to be the nature of things. And and that's almost, from an Earth, a Gaia perspective, there's a cycle of seasons in the Earth. Our mental, as above, so below is one way of saying it. The idea is walk by faith, not by sight. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all other things will be added to you. There's so many ways of saying the same thing, but the idea it's flowing from some source and it's coming through us out into the world.
The kingdom of the world is within us, right? The kingdom
of God is within you, right? Exactly. So part of it, that's the other thing I recommend for clients is to have a practice of meditation, going within. The secret place of the Most High. The idea is that sometimes our monkey mind is chattering and it's hard to calm our mind. So at least this is what I did, and I recommend clients do this, is start with just being, having some solitude, meaning sit in a room by yourself, turn the lights down, no TV, no music, no water, no smoking, no drinking anything, no eating, just be. Don't do, don't have, just be. And what happens is you can only do that for about 5 minutes, at least when you first start, maybe even 2 minutes before you're starting to move things around, or, but the idea is that, and because your mind is racing and you're not used to just being. And then extend that to there's going to come a time when you extend this 10, 15, 20 minutes, we can go for an hour. Thoreau talked about doing it for a whole day. So we reach a place now where the monkey mind calms down and our mind starts feeling calm. It still may be talking, and we're not identifying with it. We're just letting it's like the clouds going by. The thoughts are there, but we're not identifying with them. Now's the time to be able to go into the meditation and say, go within, because our monkey mind is not distracting us. And if we go within, then what happens is we end up getting impartations, we're getting intuition. God doesn't speak in English, but he does speak through other people, resources, opportunities, intuitions, ideas will come to us that we wouldn't have had. And it's because, and that's how we communicate with God, spiritual world, higher self, whatever you want to call it.
Correct.
It comes through the intuition. It comes from within to the without. So the idea is, if you want to enhance the quality of your life in the without, enhance the quality of your life on the within. And that's through a meditative practice.
It's funny, the Eastern side of the world, they know that, right? That's their secret.
Yeah.
But the Western side are a little bit late on that, but it's never late. Right? We're never late. We're never
late over till you're over, and you're not over
right.
yet.
And so, that's a big one right there. I mean, it was a big one for me to also change my own thinking, is to, be still, be quiet, and just listen to that inner voice, because eventually it will speak to you, right? Because when the noise is not happening, then you can hear it. Only through stillness will you hear it. And that was a whole new concept for me as well to learn.
Yeah.
But I can vouch that it works. Yeah. I can vouch that you get those messages you need to know. And I love the fact that you said that God works through other people. When we say believe in God, that means, have faith that you'll get the answer. The answer may not be, right there in front of you, but somehow the message will come through, because
God doesn't have hands, so he uses other people who do,
That's right. And it's acknowledging that connection. And that's the spiritual part, is just acknowledging that there is something within all of us. The rays from the sun is not disconnected from the sun. The wave in the ocean is not disconnected from the ocean.
Exactly. It's sort of like, the hand, which is better, the thumb or the pinky? They're just different aspects of the hand.
That's right.
All expressions of the divine mind, of that oneness. We're not better or worse. We're just different.
That's right. And only the level of awareness that where we're at is the separation between understanding this important aspect of life.
Yeah.
That will lead us to not only, like I said, financial freedom, but freedom from life, being a fear.
From fear-based living to love or hope-based living.
Right. And love is the answer, isn't it, Bill?
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer. Love is the glue that keeps it all together. When there's no love, then there's fear. And both love and fear we cannot see. So you get to choose. You get to choose which side are you on. And if we're worried that, if we're living in anxiety, fear, stress, depression, anger, then we know that's not love. Love is knowing that we're going to be okay. And that's the message I want to send, because if you're living on purpose and you're serving with your heart and you're loving your neighbor like you love yourself, then you will flourish in your business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
the idea is, again, it's in other words, learning to be the conduit, not the.
Yes.
In other words, we're the
We're co-creators, though. We are co-creators. Even though we're conduit, we are co-creators.
Yeah, in other words, we're the physical manifest. Our mind and our physicality. The five physical senses are the tools we use to create in this world.
Right.
But it's God create. We're an expression of that divine mind. We're the fingers in the hand of God. So He's using us for whatever. And the big picture issue is we're supposed to love one another, not take advantage of each other. Just another thought in terms of going back to the tactical, practical.
We're going to take it down for landing. Last thought.
Okay. Getting back to the tactical, practical, what you need to learn, or what people need to learn, or what the wealthy people learn, is how to make taxes and inflation their friend. And that's what I specialize in.
And you do your workshops, you give workshops, and you do all that. We're going to put that information on
I've got a couple of, I got a workshop coming up next week. I'll put the contents and I'll put the details in the comments.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate and love you.
Likewise, I always love what you share, because you're proof that, change can happen at any age, right? At any age. It's just the willing to say, yes, I'm ready. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope this show brings you some financial freedom. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for joining me on Sparking Change with Gigi. I hope that our episode today has ignited a spark within you to create positive change in your own life and in the world around you. To learn more about how you can become a guest or supporter, head over to sparkingchangenow.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to me, and it helps me to continue producing content that sparks change in each of us and the world. You can find us on various platforms, including Google Play Store, Apple App Store, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Android TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to having you join me again next week on Sparking Change with Gigi.